News presented by your Tampa Bay area Volkswagen dealers. Drive bigger.
Good evening. I'm Rick Elmhorst.
And I'm Holly Gregory. This is your Spectrum News in 90. Former State Representative Joe Harding has been sentenced to 4 months behind bars. The Marion County Republican pleaded guilty to wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements in connection with COVID-19 relief fraud back in May. Following his prison time, he will be on 2 years of supervised release.
Hillsborough County Schools and the Teachers Union, they're going to be meeting tomorrow to finalize contract language for their teachers. Now, that deal includes raises for all instructional personnel based on step levels. That meeting starts at 9 a.m.
Small business owners who suffered physical or economic damage from Hurricane Idalia have a bit more time to apply for federal assistance. The U.S. Small Business Administration has extended the deadline for those applications. Eligible business owners now have until November 29th to apply.
That's a quick look at your news. Time now for your Klystron 9 forecast.
Well, early in the week, we were talking about how cool it was, and we said we would kind of step our way up as we headed through this week, and we would gradually get milder. Sure enough, we're about 2 to 3 degrees milder than we were 24 hours ago. So it's not extreme heat. It's not like summertime's coming back, but it's definitely milder than it was earlier in the week. So walking out the door for your morning, low temperatures, low to mid 50s for you folks in northern counties, upper 50s to low 60s inland, and low to mid 60s near the coast.
President Biden addressed the nation tonight, making his case for billions in U.S. funding for Israel and Ukraine to help them in their war efforts.
For only the second time in his presidency, Biden delivered an address from the Oval Office, and he said that the attacks by Hamas militants in Israel echo what he says is the brutality inflicted on Ukraine by Russia. The president also talked about humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip and thousands there who are displaced.
In discussions with the leaders of Israel and Egypt, I secured an agreement for the first shipment of humanitarian assistance from the United Nations to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. If Hamas does not divert or steal these shipments, we're going to provide an opening for sustained delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance for the Palestinians.
The president also renewed his promise to bring the Americans held hostage by Hamas home. That's as the number of Americans missing and killed in the war continues to grow.
Taking a look now at the latest on the war between Israel and Hamas, the Pentagon says a U.S. Navy warship in the Middle East shot down a number of missiles near the coast of Yemen today.
Officials say those missiles and drones were launched by Iranian-backed Houthi militants and that the U.S. Navy was doing their part to protect the region.
This action was a demonstration of the integrated air and missile defense architecture that we have built in the Middle East and that we are prepared to utilize whenever necessary to protect our partners and our interests in this important region.
The Pentagon press secretary went on to say that it's not clear what the missiles were actually targeting, but said they were launched, quote, potentially toward targets in Israel. The Pentagon also said there were no casualties to U.S. forces or to any civilians that they're aware of.
Well, that's after the U.S. State Department reported the death toll of Americans killed in the conflict had risen to 32. And while the ground invasion into Gaza has yet to happen, Israel's defense minister alluded to it being imminent, calling on forces to, quote, get organized, be ready.
We continue to hear from folks here in the Bay Area who are desperately trying to reach their loved ones trapped in Gaza. Today we heard from a mother who lives in Tampa. She says her husband and 5 children are currently in the Gaza Strip. They were visiting relatives when the war broke out, and she has not been in contact with them since October 10th.
I don't know if they are in the safe area. I don't know if they are. I don't know nothing about my kids.
Officials with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is calling on the federal and state government to help evacuate Palestinian Americans stuck in Gaza. They're also calling for a ceasefire in the region. In the meantime, workers at the Rafah border crossing in Egypt are preparing for its opening tomorrow morning. At least 25 trucks carrying humanitarian aid for Palestinians in Gaza are on standby and ready to go in. The United States, Egypt, and Israel agreed to open the border after President Biden's meeting with Israel's Prime Minister on Wednesday.
The pain of not knowing what happened to a loved one is something shared by more than 3,200 families in Florida. That's how many missing and endangered people from this state are registered on a national database. Well, today, local law enforcement agencies, they held a Missing in Florida event to help generate leads in those cases. Spectrum Bay News 9's Sarah Blazona spoke with the sister of a Hillsborough County girl who disappeared nearly 50 years ago.
We have an update now on that Clearwater police officer who was arrested earlier this week. Tonight, we've learned Nicholas Paloma has been fired from the department. This comes after Paloma was charged with false imprisonment and sexual battery of a tourist. That tourist told officers that Paloma had stopped her for jaywalking near the Clearwater roundabout early Sunday, and the police chief says that Paloma told the woman she wouldn't face charges if she took part in sex acts with him. Prior to being terminated, Paloma had been with the department for 5 years and had no previous disciplinary issues.
We are learning more about last week's storms that brought damage to parts of the Bay Area. Our weather experts and the National Weather Service now say it was 6 tornadoes that touched down during last week's round of severe storms. That's 4 more than the initial reports. 1 touchdown in Citrus County and another in Pinellas County. The other 4 tornadoes were all EF0. Crystal River saw some of the worst damage, and one mother we talked to says she woke up to find trees and branches scattered across her yard.
This one just broke off the oak tree. I have another oak tree that has actually been lifted from the ground with the roots just laying over the yard.
Several people that we spoke with say that storm cleanup is taking longer and costing more than what they anticipated.
All right, some high clouds zipping across our skies for your Thursday night. It actually made for a nicer sunset because those high clouds accentuated the sunset. There were some colors, some vibrancy in the sky. I thought the way Tim framed this picture in Holiday was perfect. He always gets great shots for us, but this one, with the boater coming in for the night, that is just classic Florida. And look how calm it was out on the water also. This was a great picture too. You can see there was more color in this one. It just happened to be at the right time where, see what I mean as far as the color with those high thin clouds? Devin sent that shot in. He was out at the Courtney Campbell Causeway looking right across Tampa Bay. Perfect timing on that. All right, let's take a look at the forecast for this weekend. We're going to start with partly cloudy skies for your morning. Still some of those high, thin clouds going by, but they will tend to clear out. We'll go back to mostly sunny skies during the day. As we head deeper into your Friday evening, we might be able to squeak out a shower or sprinkle. That technically will be a weak front drifting into the area. However, that front is not going to have a big impact on our weekend forecast. So if you're wondering, well, what about rain? Nope, don't worry about it. What about cold air? Nope, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen, okay? This is going to be a very weak front, and basically all it does is it just switches our winds again and just brings in another dry air mass. That's what it's going to do. All right, 50s and 60s walking out the door for your morning. High temperatures, maybe a degree or 2 cooler near the coast because of a stronger onshore breeze, but inland areas still low to mid 80s. For your Saturday morning, a little bit warmer because of that same onshore breeze, but then Saturday afternoon, no change in the temperatures, essentially low to mid 80s. Okay, well, maybe a little change, maybe going back up a degree or 2, but you get the point. There isn't going to be any widespread major change. The main moisture with this front is going east, and you can see the drier air already on the back side is coming towards us. So that's what I mean when I say it really is going to reinforce dry air. Check this out. Look at this dry air rushing right down towards us. So there just isn't a lot of moisture in place, and this is definitely not going to bring us any more. The positive side, the flip side of this is the humidity levels don't go up. They stay in the pleasant range. They're not as low as they were a couple days ago, but you can see here they just kind of stay steady, and then if anything, they drop back down again. So it's just enough to keep knocking that humidity level down to make it feel comfortable. All right, 50s and 60s walking out the door for your morning. Then for the afternoon, highs 70s at the beach, low 80s inland. For the weekend, a couple degrees warmer, but that's about it. Highs right around 84, 85 degrees. I'll be back with your 7-day coming up in less than 10 minutes.
Of Spectrum Bay News 9 is brought to you by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Here are your winning lottery numbers.
Saturday, Hillsborough County Schools made a major announcement aimed at improving student safety. They'll be installing cameras on all of the district's school buses.
Those cameras are going to capture the license plates of drivers who illegally pass stop buses. The district is the first in the state to equip its entire fleet of buses with that technology. Spectrum Bay News 9's Fadia Patterson gives us a look at how it's going to work. In your destination space news, NASA just uncovered a new feature of Jupiter's atmosphere. Scientists say the James Webb Telescope captured a narrow jet stream in the planet's lower stratosphere. NASA says the jet stream spans more than 3,000 miles and travels at about 320 miles per hour. That's twice the strength of a Category 5 hurricane. NASA says the crew of the Artemis 2 mission is continuing to train for its trip around the moon. We showed you last month when the 4 astronauts took part in a dry run of launch day operations. That included a trip to NASA's new electric crewed transport vans. NASA says 2 crew members, Christina Cook and Jeremy Hansen, also took part in geology training in September. The Artemis 2 mission won't land on the moon, but NASA says the training will prepare them for, quote, lunar observations. And up next, NASA says the astronauts will begin orbit operations training, including the use of a simulator at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
The next launch from Florida's Space Coast is set to take place this weekend. SpaceX wants to launch its Falcon 9 rocket Saturday night. It'll be carrying Starlink satellites into orbit from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The rocket is set to go up at 10:23 p.m. and you can count on us to watch it live when it happens, right here on Spectrum Bay News 9. And keep up with all of our Space Coast happenings on the Spectrum News app. You can scan this QR code and download it now. That's where you'll find everything from current missions to a schedule of the upcoming launches.
Fisher-Price is recalling thousands of toy trains over a choking risk. The company says it's recalling about 21,000 of the Thomas and Friends Wooden Railway troublesome truck and crates. Fisher-Price says a small plastic piece with a high-powered magnet that connects the trains can loosen or detach, posing a choking risk for kids. There's already been one report of the connector becoming loose and then detaching, but so far, no injuries have been reported. Customers can return the recalled toys for a full refund.
Still to come, Orlando City Council announced this week plans to buy the Pulse nightclub property. Why this plan is drawing some mixed reaction, though, from the community, despite the purchase being years in the making.
Well, for your Friday, it's going to be a nice day. Seasonable temperatures, not nearly as cool as we started this week. Humidity stays decent, though, okay? That's actually going to be a big headline because we all know this time of year we can still see really muggy conditions. So at least going through this weekend, it'll be warm, seasonable, average temperatures, but the humidity does not pop up. Reinforcing shot of dry air does arrive, though, okay? So think of this next front that's going to be moving towards us as a shot of dry air, but no cold air. There's a lot of high clouds spilling past us. Believe it or not, these clouds actually have their origins all the way back with a hurricane in the Pacific Ocean. So they're coming across Mexico, across the Gulf, but they're fair weather clouds. They really don't have anything to do with our weather. Up to our north, there's what does have something to do with our weather. Low pressure area that's going to be going eastward, dragging this front southeastward. Now, the cold air and the rain is going to stay well to our north. Perfect case in point here. You see the dip in the jet stream. There it is right there. Now watch the core of the cold air. It goes due east, and you can even see the alignment of the jet stream basically tells you where the cold air is going to go. All right, so Great Lakes and basically upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic. You can kind of see how everything's pointed in that direction. We're not going to get the shot of cool air like we did last weekend. So that being said, let's walk you through the forecast. Mostly sunny skies for your Friday. Late in the day, going into the evening hours, there will be a front that approaches, and we might be able to get a sprinkler shower out of it for your Friday night. But don't get excited. If you get one, you'll be very, very lucky. There won't be many of them. And then going into Saturday, pretty quiet conditions on the backside of that front. So if you're doing any boating, it looks pretty good. Northerly breeze very light in the morning, followed by a westerly breeze at about 10 knots. When you look at the 7-day forecast, looks fine. There won't be any cool down for this weekend, but it is a nice pattern. 82 for your Friday, 85 Saturday, 84 Sunday. The warmest day will be Monday, and then we come right back down to about 83, 84 for next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Tonight, we're following up on Orlando's tentative deal to buy that Pulse nightclub property. For some, this has been a long time coming, but Holly, there really are some mixed reactions here.
There are. We're going to hear more about that now. Spectrum Bay News 9's Jeff Allen spoke with Pulse survivors about this deal and the plans for a memorial at the site. It is tonight's special assignment. Here's a look at the timeline of how we got here. The shooting happened in June of 2016. A few months later, the city reached a deal to buy the site, but it fell through. The One Pulse group started planning a memorial then in 2018, and the city reached another deal this past week. It'll go before the city council next week.
Presented by your Tampa Bay area Volkswagen dealers. Drive bigger.
Good Thursday evening. I'm Rick Elmhorst.
And I'm Holly Gregory. This is your Spectrum News at 90. Today is Missing in Florida Day. Here in Florida, more than 3,200 people are declared missing in the national database. The Florida Institute of Forensic Anthropology and Applied Science is hosting an event allowing families to fill in any gaps in information and provide DNA to law enforcement to aid in the search of their loved ones.
The Hillsborough woman convicted of killing a Polk County lottery winner was denied a new trial. Doris D.D. Moore says her attorneys failed to present evidence that would have led authorities to other suspects.
Hillsborough County is giving parents more control over the books they can borrow from public libraries. According to our partners, the Tampa Bay Times, this plan allows families to limit what materials kids ages 17 and under can walk out with.
That's a quick look at your news. Time now for your Klystron 9 forecast.
Well, your forecast is straightforward for your morning. Not as cool as we were seeing the past couple of mornings, but seasonably comfortable. That's probably a good way to put it. So, low to mid 50s for Levy, Citrus, Hernando, Pasco County, upper 50s to low 60s inland, and more like mid to maybe even some upper 60s closer to the coast. Speaking of the coast, great beach day for your Friday, about as good as it gets. Westerly breeze, highs in the upper 70s at the beach, but areas inland will get to the low 80s.
Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says he will seek another vote to try and become House Speaker, even though many of his opponents say they still will not back him.
Jordan's vow to press on capped an extraordinary day of acrimony among House Republicans who've been unable to agree on a successor to ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy, leaving the chamber paralyzed for more than 2 weeks.
Our Karina Capabianca has the latest now on this impasse happening in Washington.
It's been an ongoing item on Tampa City Council's agenda for years. Residents in one Ybor City neighborhood, they're fighting to get some kind of action about the number of sexual predators in the area.
Today, council members heard new studies and facts from the University of South Florida and the Tampa Police Department about this issue. Spectrum Bay News 9's Julia Hazel was at that meeting and has more on that and what residents have to say about it.
Just last week, it was announced Ybor City's annual St. Patrick's Day parade would be moved to downtown, with organizers saying they want to make the event, quote, more family friendly. According to our partners at the Tampa Bay Times, residents voiced concerns about losing the revenue that event typically brings to that neighborhood. Former Donald Trump attorney Sidney Powell has pleaded guilty in the Georgia election subversion case. Powell pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanor charges, admitting she played a role in breaching election systems in Georgia. She'll now serve 6 years probation and pay a $6,000 fine. And Powell's guilty plea comes one day before jury selection in her trial. Now, as part of the plea deal, Powell must testify in future trials, which may include former President Trump's trial. Powell is the second person in the case to plead guilty.
The man accused of killing rapper Tupac Shakur will have to wait even longer to hear his charges formally read against him. Dwayne Keith Davis appeared in court today, where his lawyer asked the arraignment be pushed back 2 weeks, which the judge did approve. Davis is now due in court November 2nd. And this is the second time his arraignment has been delayed after he requested more time for his lawyer to prepare earlier this month. Davis is accused of orchestrating the shooting of Shakur back in 1996. He's currently being held without bail.
No matter if it's Little League or the pros, playing sports can take a toll on an athlete's mental health. Still to come, see what one Bay Area program is doing to look out for young athletes.
Oh had some great sunset views out there for your Thursday evening. A lot of that had to do with the high clouds that were spilling across our skies. They were actually high clouds that came all the way from the Pacific Ocean, came across Mexico, across the Gulf, and in through our skies. Now, they're fair weather clouds, and they were thin enough that it really wasn't that big of a deal, but they actually accentuated the color in the sky. So as you can see there, this picture from Juan in San Antonio, again, the sun was shining through them, but made for some nice color. And there you can see some of the cloud cover also in Lakeland from Pat. All right, let's get right to the forecast to show you what this looks like. As we head into your Friday, I'm not really expecting any bad weather. Yes, technically a front is on the way, but this is not like a front that, you know, like the last one where we said, wow, this is a strong front. No. This is going to be a very weak front. If we can even get a shower or sprinkle out of it, I'll be impressed. Maybe by your Friday night, a couple little showers skirting through with the front. That's about it, okay? But what it will do is it will essentially switch our wind direction and reinforce the dry air again. That's basically what it does. So it just kind of brings in some more dry air. So 50s and 60s walking out the door for your morning. High temperatures, not much different than we saw for your Thursday. I'd say maybe a little cooler at the coast only because there'll be a stronger onshore breeze, but inland areas still around the low to mid 80s. For your Saturday morning, technically warmer because of that onshore breeze, staying in the 60s and 70s, but then Saturday afternoon, again, really not that much different, low to mid 80s. So essentially, we don't change the weather a whole lot for this weekend. The main feature will be another shot of drier air. So watch our dew point numbers. If anything, they stay steady, maybe go up a little bit briefly, and then they come right back down as the drier air comes in for late Saturday going into Sunday. So that's really your main thing, your main feature with this front. Unfortunately, the bulk of the moisture is sliding east. You can see it right up here, and it's headed eastward. It's not coming south. So this is a really dry air mass behind this front. All right, partly cloudy skies, 50s and 60s walking out the door. High temperatures, low 80s, I'd say 70s at the beach. And this weekend, not a lot of change, okay? Again, the coldest of air is staying to our north. So this weekend, there will be big changes in the northeast with another surge of cold air, and they will also have rain headed towards the mid-Atlantic and northeast. But look at all that moisture. It's going eastward. It's not coming south. All right, coming up in just a bit, we'll have your tropical update, talk about Tropical Storm Tammy, and we'll have your 7-day forecast.
Well, after a winless road trip, including the last two games without their captain, the Lightning and Steven Stamkos were back on the ice at Amalie Arena on Thursday night, trying to turn around what has been a rough start to the season.
Some local entrepreneurs are creating a program designed to help improve the mental health of athletes in youth sports. Now, according to the NCAA, college athletes really only have a small chance of going pro in their sport, and that means the lessons they learn on the ball field will need to translate to other professions in life.
Spectrum Bay News 9's Nick Popham reports on the program that is working to develop those positive mental health traits for kids that'll help their approach in life while playing a game they love as well.
Greco and Kornfeld came up with that idea back in 2021, and they've made the website accessible for organizations to join at the end of September. And they say it's geared towards youth organizations to use for their participants, but it's also possible for parents to individually purchase that program to use for their young athletes as well.
As we head into your Friday, still pretty nice conditions. We'll talk about that local forecast here in just a bit. Let's start with the tropics, though, okay? We've got Tropical Storm Tammy out here east of the Caribbean, all right? Not affecting land right now, but it probably will scrape right by the Leeward Islands, which is basically, if you've ever been out on a cruise or been out to the Eastern Caribbean, these are called the West Indies, and these are also called the Windward Islands. Then it goes towards the Leeward Islands. This is barely going to scrape by just to the northeast of the Leeward Islands, so it could affect places like Barbuda, Antigua in a couple of days. It's going to be borderline tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane, something like that. Most of our guidance is saying it's going to start to take that northerly turn, but again, it's going to be a really, really close call on exactly when it makes that northerly turn and whether or not it could affect a couple of these islands out here. So they've got some tropical storm warnings and some hurricane watches in effect for those areas. As far as our weather, no tropics affecting us, okay? The great thing about this time of year is if you get tropical storms or hurricanes out here in the Atlantic, they very rarely are ever going to make a run at the mainland of the U.S. because we have cold fronts coming off the eastern seaboard. So they kind of rebuff them. They kind of push them back. We tend to be more worried about anything that forms down in the Western Caribbean. For example, it was back in 2005 on this date that we started to worry about Hurricane Wilma because it was meandering around down here in the Western Caribbean. And again, the same cold fronts that tend to keep Atlantic storms away are also the same cold fronts that can turn hurricanes and make them come right up towards Florida. Think like Charlie, for example, okay, and Michael. Those are examples of October hurricanes that can kind of turn and go northeastward, although Charlie technically wasn't an October hurricane. Wilma is a better example, but the point being, they can do that. Luckily for us, we're getting strong cold fronts this October, and you can see how it's pushing the moisture southward. So there's no threat of any tropical weather coming towards us. Your Friday boating forecast looks fantastic. Northerly breeze, very light for the morning. Westerly breeze in the afternoon, about 10 knots. There's your 7-day forecast. No cold air coming towards us for this weekend. We're looking at highs staying right around the mid-80s. Warmest day will be Monday, and then we get right back down to about 83, 84 degrees for next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But it is a nice pattern, at least, with humidity levels staying moderate. All right, there's the pollen forecast for the next 3 days, brought to you by Famous Tate Appliance and Bedding Centers, 6.4, 6.1, 6.3.
Walker, and this week on In Focus, tourism is the economic driver in the state of Florida, but after a crippling COVID-19 pandemic, are the numbers rebounding according to expectations now? And are efforts by Visit Florida working to get tourism in the Sunshine State back to those pre-pandemic levels? The value of Visit Florida, that is on this week's In Focus, Sunday at 11:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. right here on Spectrum, Bay News 9.
In your health news tonight, the FDA is considering a ban on some hair straightening chemicals amid concerns they could increase the risk of uterine cancer.
Now, those chemicals have been used in products typically used by black women for hair care for many years. The products in question contain formaldehyde and formaldehyde-releasing chemicals. For more health stories, you can visit baynews9.com or our Spectrum News app.
More news and weather coming up at the top of the hour, including how residents are still recovering from last week's series of tornadoes. We're hearing from a Crystal River mom who had to postpone her 4-year-old birthday party because of the damage to her home. It took a huge financial toll. She's not the only one. That story and more coming up at the top of the hour.
You're watching Spectrum Bay News 9, and we'll be right back.
Here's what's going on in our community. Brought to you by Mitchell Roofing Company.